Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and as we head into the final week of Parliament this year, before Tory MPs return to face the questions of their constituents, or maybe find a fridge to hide in, I take a look at why many Conservatives are still prepared to give Boris Johnson more time. And it is not as foolish a thing as may first appear. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So this actually feels a little bit like one of those pre-recorded broadcast things in the event of nuclear war or something. In the event that you're watching this, Boris Johnson is still not resigned, basically. So there's going to be a lot of talk about when, if at all, Boris Johnson is finally deposed. And it's in terms of the runners and the riders in the race as well, because some senior Conservatives have already made it known subtly through the media, basically, that they are interested in succeeding Boris Johnson. But there's not necessarily any need to get ahead of ourselves. Now, it's possible that enough Tory MPs are now going to tell the Prime Minister that enough is enough and he has to go. They might do that today, they might do it tomorrow, they might do it on Friday. You know, it might be that he is forced to resign this week in order to avoid the humiliation of one of their safest seats, a seat that's been held by the Tories for 200 years, being involved in a tight contest. Because if Boris Johnson announces resignation today, guaranteed the Conservatives win that seat comfortably as well, comfortably on Thursday. They may still win it, but they will only win it by a small margin if that doesn't happen. But equally, there's no real need for Conservative MPs to panic and jettison just yet. I'm not suggesting that he could get over this. I mean, who knows with him, but I don't think that's likely. You know, obviously journalists have been talking to a lot of Tory MPs recently and reporting their anonymous statements. I talked about some of them yesterday as being absolutely barking. You know, I've seen one saying that they give Boris Johnson 30 days to come clean about the parties. Why 30 days? Even with the Christmas recess, that still means, doesn't that mean still 2 more damaging PMQs to negotiate before his time would be up? Why not demand honesty now? Saying that they give him 30 days is basically saying, look, I want to see if this blows over. I'm gonna say to my constituents that I'm demanding the Prime Minister answers for all this, but I just want it to blow over. I'll give it 30 days. So they're not doing anything. Another said that Johnson should have a clear out at number 10. The problem is all the sycophants he surrounds himself with. If he would just get rid of them and get competent people in, things would be better. Which completely misses the point that Johnson hasn't just accidentally surrounded himself with sycophants. He's done it deliberately. His ego cannot take people telling him that he is wrong or that he's lazy or what that he wants can't be done. You know, I'm not suggesting an official would put it in quite those words, but, you know, the meaning would be the same. You know, doommongers and naysayers, he calls them. Boris Johnson cannot function surrounded by competence, because competence is realistic and pragmatic, 2 qualities that run counter to Boris Johnson's modus operandi. So why are these Tory MPs so delusional as to think that Boris Johnson can get past this, as he has done in the past, and still lead them to victory in the next election? Well, the answer, apart from what I was discussing yesterday in terms of just blind lack of logic, if you put yourself in their place, even for a rational Tory MP, should there be such a thing, like I tried to imagine, so let's imagine I was a Tory MP and I tried to think about, so, okay, once you've committed to deciding that Boris Johnson is going to be a liability now, who do you replace him with? You can't just say, oh, the problem's the leader, get rid of the leader. You know, that's a bit like the old meme, isn't it? Oh, X number of people die in hospitals every year. We should close all the hospitals, then those people won't die. You know, you can't just think, just get rid of the leader. Now what do? We need a new leader. Who's that new leader? That's the thing. It's all right saying Johnson's a liability. You don't get rid of him until you've got a good idea that a successor would be better. So let's go through the alternatives very quickly. Rishi Sonak first. For most of the last year, good chunk of this year arguably, he was seen as the favourite. The reason for this was simple. He was seen as the only competent member of Johnson's cabinet. He introduced furlough, business support. If you look at the detail, you'll see that he botched the implementation of quite a lot of these support packages. 3 million people were completely left out. A load of very wealthy business people, including his wife, got a load of financial support, which didn't seem to be in the interests of good governance. But most people don't look at the detail. So he appeared competent. He's also more in line with Tory thinking on spending. If you're a typical Tory, low tax, low spend Conservative, most real Conservatives aren't too impressed with Johnson's big spending ideas because, despite what he says, they know there's a cost with it. In particular, Conservatives in the south of England don't like the idea of paying higher taxes for levelling up in the north of England. Sunak's not keen on that either, even though he is in the north. So they will appreciate that. However, his last budget announced the largest tax burden in 70 years. I don't think it's any surprise that Sunak's popularity amongst Conservative Party members has waned massively as a result of this. He still might fit the bill of being the most suitable to lead a government from the Conservatives' point of view. His economic policy is generally in line with theirs. He was a Brexiteer from the start. That works in his favour. He has an easygoing manner, which could appeal. But he's not likely to make good on Johnson's promises in the north of England. Now, that is a big problem for a lot of the 2019 crop of Tory MPs. Now, I'm not sure how many other MPs really trust him as well. Then we come on to another popular choice, Liz Truss. Now, I may talk more about her in a separate video because, my goodness, there's so much to say. But, she's been the most open, I think, in pursuing a leadership campaign. But she is vacuous. I said before that she's not as thick as many of her cabinet colleagues. She's probably above average, and I'll stick by that. But that's a comparative term. She would be one of the thickest members of a competent cabinet. She performs very poorly in Parliament. Labour have had no problems destroying her. Starmer would have no problems at all. She was also on the Remain side. Now, yes, she pretends to be a Brexit convert now. She'll do whatever necessary to support her career. But will MPs really trust her when she changes so quickly? The bottom line is that she has benefited from appearing to be competent by arranging the post-Brexit trade deals. But the thing is, those trade deals are worthless, and it's likely that MPs know that those trade deals are a sham. The party members may not, but those in Parliament, I'm not going to say surely do, who knows, but you would think a certain number will. So they'll also know that she hasn't really achieved anything. Also, I gather they weren't impressed with her efforts to make herself look like Margaret Thatcher in that tank. Now, if I were a Tory MP, I wouldn't be confident of going into the next election with Liz Truss as leader. So then there's Michael Gove. Competent, sure, but by his own admission lacking in charisma. Might not be a huge problem when the Labour leader also suffers from this affliction, but it is still a drawback. Also, will Gove really be able to win over those red wall voters? He's a competent minister, but not necessarily a good campaigner. Bear in mind that he largely ran the Vote Leave campaign along with Dominic Cummings, but needed Boris Johnson to front it as their PR guy. That suggests that Gove will back himself to lead a government, but not a campaign. Now, that would put me off. Priti Patel is insane. I gather she's actually talked positively to the media about her chances, but surely she's too insane. She will appeal to the far-right swivel-eyed loons, but that just means she'd be fighting Reform UK for votes, not the essential centre ground. She was banned from even talking during the last general election campaign. How on earth could you have her leading the party? Dominic Raab is touted as possible champion of the right of the party as well. But behave yourself. He used to be the thickest member of cabinet. That honour now goes to Nadine Dorries, but that still makes Raab runner-up. He's also just as lazy as Boris Johnson. Can you imagine? Someone just as lazy as Boris Johnson, but even thicker. The fall of Kabul completely demonstrated that and largely disgraced him. I remember how well Starmer ate him for breakfast when he first became Labour leader and Dominic Raab was deputising for the, at the time, hospitalised Boris Johnson. Tory MPs will remember that too. Jeremy Hunt, backbencher, could lead a scandal-free government, absolutely. He'd be almost normal, but never really seemed like the hard Brexit believer. As such, he could split the party over future Brexit policy. I'm not saying he'll try and reverse it. I don't think he will. But I can't see him wanting to carry on down the path of international isolation either. Steve Baker, another potential dark horse, don't actually know if he wants to stand or not. He wants the hard Brexit too much. He could also split the party for the same reason. You know, the other way, as the consequences for his Brexit aims would be very severe for the economy and our international standing. Something that Conservative MPs may still care about. That's assuming Steve Baker, as I say, would even like to transition from power behind the throne. He likes to be the guy who sits on the... You know, he famously turned down a position in Boris Johnson's government because, as he said himself, he wants to be able to vote against the government when he feels like it. I don't know whether he wants to transition to being the power behind the throne to the throne itself or not. Beyond that, who is there? I mean, Matt Hancock apparently talked of his chances. Behave yourself. This is a man who was sacked for pissing off Rupert Murdoch. Tories are never going to get behind him. Sajid Javid, he was absolutely hopeless in the last leadership contest. I'm not sure he's going to be seen to be in a stronger position this time round. Nadeem Zahawi might be seen as a credible compromise candidate, but he's mired in the sort of sleaze that has been hurting the party lately. Be a bit of a risk. You know, he and his family gained a lot of valuable government COVID contracts. Surely you'd want a leader who can't be dogged personally by these scandals. You'd want someone who can make a break from the Tory sleaze. And this is the problem for Tory MPs right now. It's not that they have no chance of a successor who could win the next election. I'm not going to stand here and say, oh, the Conservatives are doomed, whatever. No, at this point in time, you'd still have to say they'd be favourites at the next election. You know, the opposition have got a lot more work to do. But it's just that they all have traits that count against them. Boris Johnson is a brilliant campaigner. It's offensive to say it, but he's a brilliant campaigner. But his non-existent leadership skills have probably knackered any chance of him even getting the chance to lead another successful campaign. But who do you go for? And if you can't decide on a definite improvement and you have time, why not take that time? Because here's the thing. This is where the calculation is. If Tory MPs think that all of these scandals can be laid at the feet of Boris Johnson, then they can afford to wait. If they think, however, that the public are against Johnson, not the Conservatives, you know, yeah, absolutely, ditch him later. You could wait another year if you wanted to. If, however, they feel that it's also damaging the party and some of that damage will remain even when he's gone, then they have to act sooner rather than later. Now, some MPs are already saying that they now expect the election in 2024, not 2023. That is already a defeat. I mean, I've said before, Labour's aim is to force that general election for 2024. Sounds mad. Why would you want it as late as possible? The reason is, when you have an early general election, it's because the government think they're going to win. So in actual fact, you want to force, because the idea is you have an early general election, you give yourself a year in a position where you think you're going to win. You give yourself the time. You know, you don't wait till the last minute, because if at the last minute something goes wrong, some crisis, and you're blamed for it, you're sunk. You know, generally speaking, it's very, very rare that a government that has lasted a full 5 years then wins. Has happened a couple of times. Very rare. So that's the best case scenario. That's backing the government into a corner, forcing it to be in 2024. Some MPs thinking it's 2023 is too tricky. It's probably fair to say that 2022 is probably out of the question. Don't count anything in or out these days. Like, there is a scenario. I mean, I didn't think we had to worry about an election in October 2019. Corbyn was doing well in resisting those moves. Then the Lib Dems and SNP went, do you want an election then, Boris? Didn't see that coming. And 6 weeks later, we had an election. If Johnson does resign, let's say next month, let's say they do decide he's damaging the party, they force him to resign next month. Successor could be in place by spring. It takes time, remember, for the leadership contest to take place, in which time he is still the Prime Minister. Unless, of course, they get the Deputy Prime Minister to take over Dominic Raab. Be vaguely hilarious, I suppose. You know, we could still get a snap general election next summer. Maybe not May, maybe June. You know, if the polls bounce straight back up, as I would expect they will. But the mood amongst Conservative MPs seem to be, from what I can discern, they expect Johnson to be in place for a few months longer at least. They don't seem to be in any rush. But who knows? Again, it all depends on a certain number of MPs having a certain view. And I don't know what that view is. It might even be most of next year. And that the election is some way off, so they're not in a rush. And I think the reason where there is some thinking behind it is they are currently trapped between having a leader who is definitely in no fit shape to lead them to electoral success. He's definitely not fit for government. They knew that in the first place. But he's also now no longer fit to lead them in a campaign. But they also don't know who is. They can't afford another Theresa May type leader. She looked fine. She looked on course to win handsomely in 2017. Then it transpired she was shit scared of the public. They didn't see that coming. They didn't realise that was the case. And you don't until they're tested. And the same could be true of a leadership contender who looks good in some respects, but is untested on the campaign trail. So although we can probably say that Boris Johnson's end is now inevitable, doesn't mean it's imminent. It will only happen quickly if Tory MPs think he's damaging the party as well as himself. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.